Okay, we on? Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I will call the meeting of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee to order at, on my old school watch, about 7:02, 7:03 p.m. And I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next on the agenda, I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. The Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District would like to acknowledge the Massachusetts tribe, the tribe of indigenous peoples from whom the colony, province, and Commonwealth of Massachusetts have taken their name. We would like to pay our respect to the ancestral bloodline of the Massachusetts tribe and their descendants who still inhabit historical Massachusetts tribe territories to this day. Next on the agenda, we have citizens' comments. Do you guys all feel echoey? Can you guys hear okay? Yeah. Okay. This is an opportunity for us to hear the citizens, hear what you have to say. It's our opportunity to listen. If you wish to speak, I'm going to interrupt myself. Anna, you didn't remind me. This meeting is being recorded. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This meeting is being recorded, and it is also being live streamed on HWCam. Okay. Thank you so much. And when we do citizens' comments, there are two opportunities. There are people here in the room, and there are also people on the Zoom link. And I'm going to give both groups of people the opportunity to speak. When you do speak, it's really important that you give your name and address, and that you please spell your name for us so that we can get it correct in the minutes. I ask you to speak for 3 minutes. Who would be willing to Michelle Bailey, would you be willing to be my timer?
Sure.
Thank you. When you have 30 seconds left, you'll just hear 30 seconds, and then when the 3 minutes are up, you'll hear that the 3 minutes are up. Okay. Let's start with people in the room. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? If so, you can please just approach the podium.
Good evening.
Hi. Oh, let's make sure, can you put the microphone up a little bit so we can make sure we can hear you?
Tall.
It's actually not. HWCam, could you turn the podium microphone up a little bit?
It's on, but, oh,
that's better. There we go. Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
I am Andrea Van Boven, capital V-A-N, space, capital B-O-V like Victor, E-N. And I live on Middlewood Drive in Wenham, and I'm running for school committee. But that's not the main reason I'm here and what my comments are. My concern is about the desire to bring the flag issue to a vote this evening. The minutes for that are only going to be passed and accepted this evening, and it's not enough time for anybody to really figure out what's going on. I've tried to look at it and get a grasp myself, but I've had a lot of people saying, huh, what's this flag thing? And so it's hard to get a real hold on that for everybody that's involved. I'm also wondering why we're spending time focusing on that when we have so many issues in the areas of academics that the school, since my children were in school, which is a long time ago, 06, my last one graduated, but we have slipped in rankings all over the place. Down into, before they joined the high school, we were #1 in Massachusetts, and now we're, depending on who you look at, we're in the 30s or even maybe as low as 41, depending on who's doing the judging. So I think we really need to spend a lot more time looking at that. And then my last comment is that it's an issue that appears, from what I can tell, seems to be quite divisive in the community. And I don't know why we want to bring something, make that an issue when we have so many other things that we really need to seriously rally around. So thank you, and
Thank you. Thank you. Looks like we have one more person in the room. Okay, welcome.
Welcome. Hello. Good evening. My name is Kirsten Alexander, Kirstenalexander. I live on Larch Row in Wenham. I'd like to thank the members of the school committee, the administration, and our district council at Merrick O'Connell for their work of many months developing a thoughtful policy on public flag displays on school property. There's been a lot of confusion about why we need a policy at all. Today we have no flag policy, and without one, the school district is left wide open to possible lawsuits if it allows only some flags, as happened in the Boston City Hall case. This new policy seems sensible. It will not put the district in the position of having to fly flags that aren't aligned with its mission, vision, and goals, while still having flexibility. Some folks have been saying, well, we should only fly the American flag on any municipal property. As someone from a Vietnam POW MIA family, I disagree. Also, I was among the good-sized crowds that attended the Hamilton and Wenham Town Progress flag raisings in June of 2020 and 2021, and the Juneteenth flag raising in Wenham last year. I saw how much it meant to the LGBTQIA+ and Black community members who attended those events and felt seen. One family said it was the first time they'd felt their family was recognized here. Flags are symbols, and symbols matter, especially when they are welcoming people who are outside of the majority. Our schools should always be welcoming, particularly for the young people inside, and even during school committee meetings. If a flag helps students feel included and seen, and it's in alignment with the school's mission, then let's fly it with pride. We don't know what flags we might want to fly in the future. Maybe the Juneteenth one to celebrate the new official state holiday. Maybe the Massachusetts flag when our new governor comes for a tour. Hopefully a Red Sox World Series flag next fall. Flags don't need to divide us, they can also bring us together. I've been watching many of these meetings from home, including ones that covered this topic. Today I wanted to come in person and ask you to please pass this policy tonight so the school committee can move on to dealing with the many other mission-critical things on its plate as we help our kids recover and get back on track from these strange pandemic times. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I do see that there are some people online. Why don't I'm gonna do a couple from Zoom, and then we'll come back to the room. I'm just gonna look at your watch. Okay. All right, do we have a couple people on Zoom that would like to comment?
Yep. Erica Mitchell, you can unmute. It's your turn.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Erica Mitchell, it's spelled ERICAMITCHELL. I live at 30 Marjorie Street. I saw that tonight the school committee has the Peru trip on the agenda. So as a parent of a child who signed up to go on that trip, I just wanted to take a couple minutes and share a parent's perspective on that trip. You know, we talk a lot in this district about how we can expose our kids to more diversity, and this trip is an excellent opportunity to do that. The kids will be traveling to Peru, experiencing a different culture, you know, understanding what's similar and what's different about how the people in Peru live. They'll be participating in service learning, which I think is an amazing opportunity for these kids. As a parent, I feel completely comfortable with my son traveling to Peru because there are significant mitigation strategies in place for this trip. Everyone going has to be vaccinated against COVID-19 and boosted. They have to test negative before they go. They have to test negative to come back. And they have to wear N95 masks while they're there. So in many ways, I think this trip is actually a lot safer than many trips families may be taking to places like Florida over spring break. So I just wanted to share the parents' perspective. I think it is, you know, we are in kind of crazy, scary times, but I look to the experts like Dr. Fauci who are telling us all that it is time to try to figure out how to move on from the pandemic. And, you know, I think we have the right strategies in place to make this a safe and meaningful trip for the students. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Looks like we've got one more online.
You.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Musser, you're all set. You can unmute.
Hi, good evening. My name is Eric Musser, ERICMUSSER, 9 Naples Road. I'm going to be really quick here, but I know that we're voting on the flag policy. I just want to reiterate again, I don't think this is something that we should be spending more time on as a school or school district and opening ourselves up to potential lawsuits. I understand that clarifying the policy in writing, many people think that, okay, well, great, that'll avoid a lawsuit. I don't believe that's the case. I think that the amount of time our council has already spent on this flag policy, I'm still waiting on how much that is so far, but I just think that the amount of cost it'll be going forward could be a lot. And again, I don't think that that's appropriate. I would just recommend everyone on the school committee to think about that. And if you're okay with the increased costs or potential financial impact of that, know that that's an option. And again, I think that we should be spending more time on other items rather than flags. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think we had one more person in the room. Yep, please approach the podium.
Hi. Beth Herr, 270 Asbury Street, Herr is my last name. I sent you, first of all, I want to thank all of you for your service because it's been a crazy 2 years. I think we all can agree to that. And I know it's been hard, and I appreciate you guys listening to our opinions. I did send out an email earlier, but those who are listening or watching have not heard what I wanted to share. What I didn't say is in my email was whether this is in the purview of the school committee, if this is even a decision that the school committee should be making. So my personal opinion is it should be the American flag and the state flag. And then if somebody is doing a course or a section on a state or a country, maybe you bring in other flags into a classroom. I don't think there should be any other flags. I don't believe Hamilton Wenham School District should be using taxpayer monies on an attorney to help craft or defend a policy that has clearly been divisive and controversial in town. Maybe you don't know that. I will share the statistics from the poll. I do believe, and maybe there's other polls that can be done, this is what I've seen so far. I do believe the policy, beside what was outlined, may cost the town in terms of not only money, because I expect there will be legal challenges, but in strife and division. I believe our time is best spent, our time, energy, and money is best spent on our children and filling in those learning gaps from the last couple of years. And, you know, if I was in your position of authority, which I'm appreciative of that you're there, I would be concerned or at least interested when I see across party lines. I see left, right, and center having an issue with having any policy except just flying the American flag. There seems to be a lot of unity on that. And that causes me to pause to say, how can so many different opinions of different politics would have that same opinion? So there was a poll that was done on a website, on a Facebook page. Take it for what you want. Most of the people appear to be Hamilton or Wenham residents. 65 said all flags but the American flag should be removed. 15 voted and said the pride flag. If the pride flag is allowed,
30
all other
seconds.
requested flags should be allowed, and we shouldn't discriminate, and then 3 voted, great, I support allowing the pride flag to be raised. So just so you have a little feedback on that from what we're seeing in the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right, did we get everyone? Okay.
Anybody else online want to speak? Please use the raise your hand feature.
I'm just going to give them 1 second on Zoom.
Got one.
Okay. This is gonna, I think I'm going to make this be the last person, okay? So it looks like we have Emily on Zoom.
Yep. Emily, you're all set. You can unmute.
My name is Emily Minster. It's MINST 5 Hilltop Drive in Wenham. And I just wanted to come on and say that I'm
Oh,
flag policy. I want to say thank you all so much for all the work that you do on the school committee representing the students. As a former student and having siblings currently in the school, I really do appreciate you taking the time to consider this flag policy and consider the opportunity of the American flag when appropriate and when it coincides with our mission and values of creating an inclusive environment, because students have shared publicly that they don't feel included or safe or in our school environment. And I think it's really important to note that when considering this policy, that like Kirsten.
Emily, you're going in and out. We're missing about half of what you're saying.
So I very much appreciate you taking the time to consider this, and I hope that you'll pass this policy tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
thank you, Emily. We did hear you. There were some parts that we couldn't quite hear, but I think we did get the majority, and I really do appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Dana, if
Yeah.
she happened to write that down, if she can like email it into us.
Yeah, and that's actually,
The minutes.
right, so Emily, if you can hear me, you absolutely can send a transcript, and anyone can at any time reach out and send us an email with your comments. But Emily, that would be helpful just so that we get it accurate for the minutes, if you can. If not, we will do the best we can. Okay. Thank you all very much for your comments.
Okay, we're shutting down the Zoom link.
Oh, yes.
And you can watch further on HWCam on the YouTube site. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. All right. All right, next up, we have a review, which we do at every meeting, of the school committee protocols. David, would you be willing to read that?
Sure, I tried to ignore you, but you gave it to me anyway. So, as elected members of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that students of the district receive the best education possible. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. Number 7, administration will endeavor to make materials for school committee meetings available the Friday before the meeting. The school committee will recognize that some circumstances will not always make this possible. In any event, we recognize that having background materials available for school committee members is a best practice.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Is there any items from the consent agenda that someone from the committee would like to hold?
Are we skipping over Chris's report? Or
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was on automatic pilot. Absolutely. Yes, I'm very excited. It's because you're usually over here.
So sorry.
Yes, we have our student representative, please.
Sorry.
No, I'm looking forward to the report. Thank you.
What is the room number again?
Rover.
Was it
Rover.
Rover? Okay.
this is why I'm here right now.
Can you guys hear me? Perfect. Hello, my name is Kirsten Alexander. I'm the student body president of the high school, and I will be giving the updates from each school in the district. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. I didn't wear green, I'm so sorry. I'll start us off with updates from the high school. DECA took place March 10th through the 12th in Boston. 10 students qualified for the ICDC Leadership Conference in Atlanta, and 19 of the students were state finalists. Congratulations to them. The NEASC visit for the high school took place on March 6th through the 9th. The faculty, staff, and students were great ambassadors for the high school and are all looking forward to the feedback from the NEASC group. MCAS has begun, and all 10th grade students will take the ELA MCAS test March 22nd and the 23rd. And the math test for the 10th grade students will be administered in May, and 9th grade students will take the biology test in June. Lastly, all students have signed up for their 2022 and 2023 courses, and guidance counselors will be going to them later in the week and later in the year to discuss what they need and the credits they need before they graduate. Here are some updates for the Hamilton Wenham sports, specifically the high school. So the girls basketball team advanced to the Elite Eight of the Division IV state tournament. Congratulations to them. And the boys hockey team won the Cape Ann League Championship.
Very nice.
And Micah Katz received the Scott, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Pomerlau Award for the highest scoring dive at his state meet.
Oh.
Awards at the high school. And spring sports meeting was held last Wednesday in the high school auditorium, and spring sports will be starting next Monday on the 21st. We are very lucky to have some Hamilton performances coming up. The high school spring one-act play, The Oregon Trail, will be performed this Friday at 6 p.m. in the Farini Dramatic Center, and on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. at Beverly Middle School for the METG Drama Fest. Second, we have Miles River Middle School. We'll be presenting This Is a Test by Stephen Gregg. Runtime of 35 minutes long, and will also be presented in the middle school and high school library. Times are as followed: Thursday, March 31st at 7 p.m., Friday, April 1st at 7 p.m., and Saturday, April 2nd at 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Here's some updates from the Miles River Middle School. On Friday, March 25th at 5 p.m., there will be a movie and pizza night for seventh graders in the multi-purpose room. Tickets will be available next week during lunches. Registration for track and field is now open, and no experience necessary, and is a great opportunity to learn an event. I also did 8th grade track and field, and it was very worth it. Here's some updates for Bucher Elementary. Bucher has transitioned back to pre-COVID lunches in the cafeteria. The Audubon Center visited the kindergartners this past month. The Discovery Museum visited the 5th grade students, and they're very excited that COVID rates continue to decline. And they are also preparing for an open house next week. And lastly on the agenda, we have Winthrop. Winthrop students have returned to eating at cafeteria tables and are happy to be eating with their friends again. First graders went on a field trip to the Audubon at the beginning of the month, and Creative Creatures came to visit the first grade classrooms today with a variety of animals to learn about and even touch. That is all. Thank you so much. If you have any questions.
Thank you. I'm not trying to call you out, but did I miss it? Was there a Cutler update?
We sadly did not get any
Okay.
updates from Cutler.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure I didn't.
I know. Don't worry.
Usually we get, you're very thorough, so that's, okay. Thank you.
They're busy thinking about the principal and the new building.
They have a lot going on. Yes.
They have a lot of updates.
All right, are there any questions from the committee?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yep, okay. I really do want to say thank you very much, Chris. It is always, it really does help give us a little glimpse into all the schools, and I appreciate it. All right, so before, does any member of the committee have anything that they would like to hold from the consent agenda?
I'd like to hold the minutes, the executive session minutes of March 3rd and the donation.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Julia, would you make a motion?
Which session, executive session minutes?
Executive session March 3rd.
So I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented, withholding the executive session minutes from March 3rd and the donation.
Second.
Second by Anna Siedzik. All those in favor? It is unanimous of the 6 members who are present, and the motion passes. Michelle, tell us about the March 3rd minutes that you held.
For the March 3rd minutes, I believe we should just approve these separately so that we can approve and release them at the same time.
Thank you.
So I would move that we approve and release the executive session minutes of March 3rd, 2002.
Second.
Second by Anna Siedzik. Is there discussion? Okay, all those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. And you also held the donation.
Yeah, so the donation is for a assistant coach. So that is a stipend, correct?
That would be a stipend.
And so a stipend doesn't accrue any OPEB or retirement or anything that we need to pay in for? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other further discussion on that? Okay, could I have a motion?
I move that we accept the donation in the consent agenda.
Have a second?
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. Is there discussion? All right, all those in favor? And it is unanimous and of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Okay, all right, next up, we have a facilities report.
Yep, Tom's here to
And
join us.
Tom Geary is going to present to us.
All right, thank you for having me. I do not have a multimedia presentation because I feel that the report that's attached to the agenda, I encourage everybody to take a look at it and read it. It is a status of our school infrastructure within the district. As you're aware, or for those that aren't, goal number 4 for our district goals is centered around improving our learning environments. So the main deliverable for this goal is to provide a facilities master plan by June, and this is the status update for that. So in the report, you'll see the current infrastructure and the conditions, and along with that, I've cited multiple reports from consultants that span over the last 2 decades, stating much similar information compared to what's in my report. So I do encourage everybody to read it. You know, as we move forward, you know, items for discussion are included in there. Some we've broached at the Capital Finance Subcommittee, as far as energy performance contracts, partnership with the MSBA. And then one suggestion that I made is for us to take a look at capital planning on a more global scale with the 2 towns, so we can all plan and sync our needs as they come forward. Now, I'm happy to answer any particular questions you have in the report, but I really encourage folks to not only read what I presented, but the previous reports that are linked at the end. I will caution folks, it's, you know, I'd love to report that our facilities are completely up to date and our students are thriving in modern learning environments. And it's simply not the case. It's not unique to Hamilton and Wenham. It is a problem that spans across the Commonwealth and across the country. So I will assure people that our team takes safety very seriously. So when you read the report, please keep in mind that we do our best to keep the building safe for your children every day, but we know that we could do better. So I am happy to answer any questions you have regarding the report.
Wait, sure, I have yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. First of all, I want to thank Tom for putting this together. This is kind of the middle report as we approached our 4th goal. Tom and I started talking about this back in November, I believe, first or second week in November, and we weren't even sure what it would look like, how it would, there was about 7 iterations, and we went back and forth and changed out some different things, but we wanted to start the ball rolling in the process of really giving communities the understanding of what's really happening in our school facilities and how they do or do not meet the needs of our kids. And I think Tom has, this is a good step 1 for people to review and read, and then as we get further into the process of meeting the goal number 4 for our district goals, there will be much more extensive reporting with some actual numbers and estimates of things that will need to be done in the near future, and we'll talk about one in a minute, but there are lots of other things that are in our face with our facilities that we really need to start working with. On the good side, we've had some really strong multi-faceted meetings with the towns, both in their forums and our forums, and together with chairs and the groups of FinCom and select boards. And it's been encouraging to be able to at least have these conversations now out in the open so that people have the idea of what's happening, and we'll continue to do that. And this is just kind of another step towards being as transparent as possible, rather than all of a sudden coming out with surprises. As we move forward in the district planning for the Cutler project, there'll be even more extensive and much more focused look at some of the things that just aren't meeting our needs, or just are out to date, or just are at end of life. As we build that process with the state, other things will come out in this as well. So this is a little bit of a higher level overview just for people to review and read, and certainly Tom can answer questions at any time, but he and his crew react as well as they can with the monies that we have available, and it certainly continues to find ways with Vinny to meet the needs of and the ever never-ending emergencies that keep popping up with our facilities. So thank you, Tom, for this report.
Thank you. I wanted to say I did read the whole thing, and it was very readable, and I think that's really helpful. I do encourage the public to read it, and I know that the committee read it, and it was very helpful and clear. And I do know that there are a lot more details behind it. I did have a quick question that I believe in the report, and I think you just alluded to, that there was an appendix supposed to attach. I think I'm missing that. Did other people find the appendix?
We have the very last page.
I think the resources page.
Oh, resources. I did see the resources. For some reason, I thought there was a different, I was looking whether there was something else that I was supposed to be finding. So I did find the resources, so that's there. I just thought, so.
And I encourage, all of the links are interactive, so it'll guide you to the documents that are cited in the resources.
Excellent. All
Encourage
right.
people to look at them.
Thank you.
I'm jumping in. Is this available to the public on our website?
Right, as of right now, it's linked through the agenda for the school committee, but we will publish it to the website.
Okay,
as a
great.
standing
Live
document.
bar tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Oh,
And
it's
can we
gonna
get
go in
it
the
to
update.
Jay Burnham's weekly newsletter, email that he sends out, just so people have access to it too? Great, thank you.
Okay. Michelle?
So on page 2, you're talking about the decrease in enrollment for grades 9 to 12. And number 3 talks about the facilities. And it was my understanding that Brian Menegoni was doing a study about why families may choose private school. And I have heard this as an anecdotal thing, but do you have evidence to back this up? Do you have a survey that backs this up? Has Brian published that information yet?
Don't believe the report's published, and I will admit that it is purely anecdotal, and every time I've heard folks talk about enrollment, that same mantra comes up. So
Yeah.
That might be the only piece, the enrollment, those 3 bullet points could be the anecdotal pieces, and I would say that the rest of the report is hard data.
And I would say you're missing something there, which is that the committee made a conscious decision to decrease our enrollment from around 700, which was our historical number, accept less choice students, and that decreased our enrollment. So that was an intentional decision that is not captured in this information. So we should be sure that, it's not just because kids are going out of district, it's because we're not accepting students in district. And actually, at this point, we're actually unable to, what would be the word, get enough that we could be back to that level again, so.
I appreciate that information, and, I look at this as a living document, right? Because each year, the items that I cite in the report, if it's 25 years old in the report, next year it'll be 26 years old, so, with it being a living document, we'll make sure to, address those concerns. I appreciate that.
Anna?
Thank you, Tom, for this, which, it says in writing with pictures what a lot of people have experienced, especially those of us with elementary school kids. So I have a couple of just small things I want to make sure I understand, and then I have a sort of philosophical question for you. In the beginning introduction, you say that all school facilities were originally constructed in the 60s, but we know that's not right, so we might want to change that, just as a point of information. I don't know if it's meaningful or maybe it's a typo. On the page about Bucher, there's a couple places where there's a P in parentheses. Does that mean like priority or penguins or?
Yeah, it probably would have been helpful to have a key on there. P indicates that there's a photo followed in the album.
Oh.
So.
Thank you. I was wondering what I was missing. And I sort of echo the amount of work and data that's in here is, it's impressive, but I will say also that as a parent, as a taxpayer, it's sort of depressing, to be honest. This report it confirms what we already knew, and although I think the MSBA project with Cutler and Winthrop is so long overdue, decades overdue for the community, but reading all the other issues we still have at Bucher and now at the middle and high school, which we think of as being our new buildings, right? Like, oh, these are great, these buildings are fine, but they're really not fine. And especially on the athletic field side, which, again, it's anecdotal, but we've all been to those games and seen the fields, and it's not just embarrassing. Like, that is a word, but I think that's the wrong emotion to drive policy. You shouldn't drive policy because you're embarrassed by something. We should want to have better facilities. We want to have safe facilities. Those could be amenities that could also generate revenue. Like, we could do a lot if we had facilities that were attractive. So even though, yes, I hear that word used a lot, I actually don't think we should respond to a need out of embarrassment. We should say we want to do something better because the kids deserve better. So my philosophical question to you then is, we do the MSB project. Let's say we get that together and we really just knock it out of the park. What would be the next big project that you would tackle? If you had dollars in a 20-year plan, how would you approach this? And in terms of just the next set of priorities, what would you focus on next? Because to me, so I'll frame that, I'm frustrated that we're just now getting to Cutler and Winthrop when people have been talking about these problems for decades. We're finally fixing it, but in my mind, we should have been talking 20 years ago and really getting to it. So now that we're in the moment here, instead of waiting until there's a catastrophic failure further at Bucher or the middle or the high school, if we can be oracles, how do we get ahead of it now so that we're not faced with the same situation and we don't have the next version of the school committee saying exactly what I just said, which is, gosh darn it, why didn't you guys do something 20 years ago? I want to do the proactive thing now. So what would that be in your opinion?
That is a really tough question to answer as an individual, because I think my intent with the report is to lay out the facts of the current state, and we have to start having community conversations about the next steps. And I think a lot of that will be unfolded as we go through the Cutler process. There'll be a lot of community discussion, and I would hate to say, if I had ultimate, I would build a brand new state-of-the-art middle school, brand new state-of-the-art high school, a brand new Bucher school, and be good for the next 50 years. But I'm realistic and pragmatic, right? So I do believe that these are community conversations. As a facilities director, I want all new infrastructure. It makes my life and my day-to-day a lot easier. But I will have to, I guess, punt on the question and say that, I would let the community drive that conversation of, what we want to do next after that building, or how much can we do in that project to address the disparities in this building. We talk about the Cutler and Winthrop combination, but as we talk in the community, what if there is a bigger, school in the horizon where all three schools are looked at? Those are the valuable conversations that are part of that process. So I would love to answer the question, but I'm going to punt on it.
All right, thank you.
David, did you have, David?
Yeah, I mean, this is great. I think it's such a great first step to actually have all this stuff tangible, right? So for years now, in speaking with you or speaking with past administration, these things have existed in some way, usually a hard copy hidden in the back of an office under, a table to keep it from rocking. And it's nice to actually have this all starting to come into one place. I think having the timing couldn't be better, right? Because to sort of go towards what Anna said without sort of putting the fear of God into the community of having to build 5 new schools, excuse me, there might be stuff here that we can actually prioritize and put into one plan that falls under the umbrella of this, Cutler project, right? So we're sort of only going to the town once and actually making it a really robust, comprehensive plan that sort of touches on a lot of these things. So we're not looking at every 25 years building a new building, which would be our, because the last building was built around 2000, right? So the middle school. So, as Tom said, I think we're par for the course for the Commonwealth. I actually, having worked in some inner city schools, 1950s schools are very modern compared to some of the school buildings I've worked in. And that is a, uniquely Massachusetts problem. But, I think that we have a, great administration and a community that's really going to be excited about the possibilities, and actually having this here, all in one place and accessible, I think is going to be great. I wish we could put a tracker on how many people sort of click on this over the next couple of days, because this is pretty fantastic. Excuse me. So thank you for actually all the hard work that you put into this.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay, are there other questions? Michelle?
It's not a question, it's just a comment. Is that okay? So I feel very uncomfortable with what Anna said about, past school committees not addressing the issues. I sat in that audience probably 15 years ago when the Doran Whittier report was presented. I sat in that audience and was on the committee when a facilities plan was put together when Dr. Harvey first came here. I've been to town meetings for 20 years. The school committee has tried to address the issues at Cutler and Winthrop, but at one point they were basically told there's no way you'll get a new school and we just need to fix them. And so the school committee put forward a plan for that, and they fixed the exterior of Winthrop, and they fixed the roof on Cutler, and they put in a new boiler at Cutler. So to say that for 20 years we haven't been doing anything is just not true. I personally did not support the upgrades because I felt like we needed to address them at the time, but that was not the will of the community, and it wasn't the will of the committee. And we just need to keep in mind that it's easy to have 2020 vision to the past, but what we need to focus on is what we can do in the future. And to blame people that did their very best at the time and say that they weren't doing their job and weren't doing what needed to be done is just unfair to those people who served.
Thank you. Eric?
The reality of this is, as we look at our schools, as we look at all of these projects, you have the Cutler School project, Winthrop Cutler, however you want to look at it. You have the field project that is out there and has been churning for years and years. People have been, let's get these fields done. A lot of these things just need us. It's not the question of what's the next project, is how the heck do we execute? That's part of our problem. We need to execute, and we can approve everything here, but really my drive right now is how do I get these projects executed so that we can finally make some steps. And it might be taking small steps. We might take a little piece of one and do it and get it done. And that may be how we kind of feed it one bit at a time. The reality is, when you look at these projects, it's of a massive amount of money for these two communities to swallow all at once. So we need to look at every avenue we can, and that's part of my goal, is now how do we make this happen? I keep hearing about all these projects, and we did this, and look at this list of resources we have. We paid all this money over and over and over to have all these studies done. We did some of the work, kind of band-aided here and there, and now we're in this position. I think we're in a really strong position to execute and make this happen. So I think if we stay focused there, these are good projects for our communities to rally around, rather than some of the other things that we're not rallying around. So I think it's important for us to use this as our advantage, is part of the kind of that school development growth, if you will, but also to bring the communities together and really build something together and be proud of what we do on behalf of our kids.
Just wanted to make one, quick thank you, as I know I have another agenda item. But since I have been here for 3 years and presented statements of interest to the MSBA and different projects, the committee's supported unanimously each one of those. So thank you for that. That's a big step. I'm excited to be having these conversations in public. There's a lot of municipalities that don't want to talk about facility issues, and so thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, anything else? Okay.
Who's gonna do that?
So I think
Yeah.
you're just going to stay there, and right? You're going to go right ahead.
Tried to make it a
I
decent
think you
segue,
did your
yes.
own introduction,
Yeah,
if
there
I'm
you
not
go.
totally mistaken.
Okay.
Shaved your hat.
All right, so last year, the high school PVC roof had its 25th birthday, and we all celebrated by filing a statement of interest with the Massachusetts School Building Authority for the accelerated repair program. Our high school roof is in really, really tough shape. Just for a little comic relief, I tend to look at weather so we can plan our indoor maintenance activities. That's so. Our high school roof leaks every single time it rains. Every time we put people up there to repair it, we have to work backwards because, with the PVC, it tends to split and people create more leaks when they go up and fix it. So last year, because the roof was 25, that met the minimum age requirement to be able to apply to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for the accelerated repair program. Once the MSBA gets all of their applications in, they look at the total budget. And for folks that don't know, the School Building Authority is funded by 1 cent of every sales tax dollar goes into that fund. That pays for new school construction, renovation, and these repair projects. After they collect all of the applications, they then set minimum age of school districts that are invited into the program. So last year, and this number fluctuates year to year based on the applications they get and based on the budget, last year they set the minimum age of 29 years for roofs. So of course, this year, we're 26. We've seen it span over the years, anywhere from 26 to a maximum age of 30. So that's gonna all depend on who submitted applications, but I think it's worthwhile for the district to continue to apply. We're typically in the range of 35 to 45% reimbursement rate from the School Building Authority, which is pretty significant on a multi-million-dollar roofing project. It would be very difficult for the towns to do this on their own. And the School Building Authority process, make sure that we have an architect, an owner's project manager, to make sure that we're following all building codes and best practices. So I included in your agenda specific vote language, and I feel bad for whoever has to read it every single year because it's very long.
And that's you, Julia.
But I'm seeking I'm seeking the school committee's support to file the statement of interest for the high school roof this year.
So, just logistically, my understanding, So, yeah, no, my understanding is that, just on the logistics of this, that this is basically a resolution that we would need to read and vote to support this resolution. It's a statement that we have to put into the document, right?
We'd have to do it again next year,
That's
too.
correct.
Exactly. It's just the statement that we were saying, yes, this is a factual statement, we're ready to put it into the document, correct?
Yes, and if you recall, Madam Chair, last year you had to come and sign the draft
I do.
minutes.
I do.
So I'm going to be on the phone with Mahala on the way home to see if she can at least get this portion wrapped up relatively quickly so we can get that filed.
Okay. All right, so I think we'll take a motion first, and then if there's discussion, we can do that.
Would I just say I move to accept this language?
So
You have to read the whole thing.
You have to read the whole thing.
Well, yeah, but but I didn't know how to start. So I move to accept the text below. It says resolved Having convened in an open meeting on March 17th, 2022, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District of Hamilton and Wenham, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the Statement of Interest form dated March 3rd, 2022, for the Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School, located at 775 Bay Road, Hamilton, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future to replace the high school roof, it's all one sentence, under the Accelerated Repair Program, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second?
Second by Michelle Bailey. Okay.
I wasn't paying attention.
Thank you, Julia. All right, are there questions or discussion?
I just have one.
David?
Do we have a round number of what you, obviously not going to tie you to anything?
I would have a tough time estimating because the 21-22 numbers aren't published yet.
Yeah.
And that would give me a lot of reservation to state a number, just given where construction is right now.
Right, no, totally. I just put it out there to, have people in town just being like, wow, it cost $5 million to put a roof on, but, so, I'm not saying it's $5 million, I was throwing that out there.
Yeah, there is a
That was the
range.
number I was going to say, too. David, I was going to say, is it less than 5 million or is it more than 5 million? That was the exact number.
Is it over, under?
Yeah. Do we know if it's over or under 5 million?
When the numbers are published, I can send them out.
It doesn't sound promising.
That doesn't sound good.
No, I don't know, so. It's very volatile right now in the industry, so.
I can appreciate that.
Anna?
I'm not sure I like this punting of all these difficult questions from you, but so this is kind of getting back to the comment I was making, and I with Michelle, I want to clarify, I wasn't trying to be pointed at past committees. I guess I was sort of using more of a global we, like we, the community, have deferred maintenance. So, if former school committee members took that as a personal affront, that's not actually how I meant it. So I appreciate you saying that so I could clarify that's not how I meant it. What I'm getting at, and this is a good example of it, is we're trying to do all the right things. To Michelle's point, you've brought this before us. We voted on it before. We're going to pass it. Everyone understands there's a problem. And yet, optimistically, we might not get this, right? So then we would defer another year, things happen. So I guess in the event that the MSBA doesn't fund us, they said, well, you're not old enough yet. You're not quite yet to your 29th birthday or whatever we need to be. I mean, how much more life are we going to get out of that roof? And is there something that we, the community, and the committee, and all the stakeholders can say, look, our high school roof is leaking like a sieve. We've heard this. We know it's a problem. It's creating things. We're hopeful to get this funding, but at some basic level, we have a building whose roof is leaking, who our kids are going in and our teachers are working at. So is there something that we could do in the event that we don't get this funding again, or next year, or the next year? Is there some other step we could take to try to be more proactive? That's the point I was trying to get at, that maybe came off as an insult to people. But that's the kind of thinking I'm hoping we could try to do.
I will answer that question directly.
Okay.
And factually. I'm thankful to the committee who made a budget transfer. Was it last meeting or the meeting before? 2 meetings ago?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
So in the amount of $40,000 for immediate roof repairs. The scope of work was published last week alongside with a consultant. I have my bids in and ready to execute the purchase order to get some work done between now and June. We just have to, it's going to be weather dependent, of course, and working around MCAS schedules and school schedules. But, that was something that, I'm thankful the committee did. So that will solve some issues, right? It'll solve some pretty significant leaks that we've been patching. On a typical year, our spend is anywhere between 10 to 15,000, maybe 10 to 20,000, depending on the year, in roof repairs. So this is significant, and I'm thankful that that budget transfer went through. It's not a roof replacement, but I think that that's, we're going to get some really solid work out of this scope. So.
Michelle Bailey?
What's a typical match from the MSBA? Like, is
Anywhere
it
from, like for us, our district, we've seen a trend anywhere from 35 to 45%. All of my meetings with the MSBA, they state it at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the meeting. Do not speculate on what the reimbursement rate is. And part of the reason why I have a tough time sharing what estimates are is that we're in a public setting, and people have long memories, and we don't want to mislead people. I'd like to give you the hard data when it's studied and quoted. But the range of 35 to 45% is...
That's pretty good return on an investment if you get a decrease of that amount. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay, it looks like we're ready to vote. Would anyone like Julia to read that motion again?
Sadistic.
It's just one sentence.
You sadistic people.
Just one more sentence.
Bad as the bonds and the bank.
No, not as bad as the bonds. Bonds are the worst.
All right, we look like we're ready to vote. All those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for all that work.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Right. Very good. Okay. Next up, Superintendent Tracy is going to talk to us about the Student Opportunity Act.
Thank you. I realized in reviewing this with the leadership team for the, I don't know how many times we did, but we picked up on page 17, we just need to make a change.
Excuse me.
We misidentified where the selections are. The middle one, schedule ensures students have access to services, all minutes and services delivery expectations are met. We had marked it full implementation. It's not. It's partial. Okay. The reality is, and we noticed it yesterday after going through it again, but that's the one change I will need to make after this that we just picked up. So the report is fairly extensive comparatively. Last year's report, I think everybody got a chance to take a look at it, and we've really tried to focus on 4 subgroups. The state was pretty clear about not going above 4 focus areas. So we have our subgroups. When you look at them, they number 5, but the top two are the same kids. So we're just calling it four groups for the sake of our reporting.
The top 2?
Yeah, so if you look at first language, not English students, and English learners, those are actually similar kids, just like in other categories, there are kids that are the same. So just so people are clear about that, I could be a child in 1 category, 3 categories, or all the categories. It just depends on how they're looking at the subgroups within our student populations. Those come from the state. We don't create those on our own. Those are actually from the state and some of the federal government reporting. So the evidence-based programs are pretty clear. We tried to break them out a little bit more than they have been in the past. The first one, expanding capacity to address SEL and mental health needs of students and families. We have talked this over and over. We have made budgetary changes. We've listed budgetary changes as required. This was not done last year, so our report was blank in these areas. And then we continue to go through and use some of the check boxes that are required to be checked off, but also to describe some of the things that we're doing. And then the piece that I like, and if you look on page 8, this is the one piece I really like about this whole report, is that set of kind of multiple selections that we have where we self-identify is a great baseline for strategy planning. These are really clear and clean questions to say, okay, you marked yourself as pre-implementation or in the planning stage for something. How do you go back to that and review it next year? And that's basically how the SOA reporting is supposed to work. So if these were completed last year, we would have been able to tweak them and adjust them. So these are pictures of now, this school year. And this school year, because the previous 2 years were not included in the SOA, it originally started back in 2019 with Dr. Guckenberger and then rolled up. This is really year one. So the state never gave money last year or the year before, and they've now just notified us to say this is year one. So we took the opportunity to revamp the entire plan and in developing the process for this. The second one is developing effective family-school partnerships. We have our family community liaison is a central point of that, but also working within our systems to look at how we're communicating with families. One of the examples we show is the new change that we're making in the website. We're updating the website in April, and it will have a translation button, so you can just click a button and we can pre-choose any of the languages that we have as home languages of the people in our communities, and you can just click it and you now can view our website in your home language. So that'll be, kind of one of the additions to helping to make family connections. There are others, but just kind of highlighting some things. As we go further into this, research-based early literacy programs in pre-K and early elementary grades, we are seeing lots of activity in our literacy work. You have seen some of it already. You'll see more as we get close to the end of the year. We're now starting to integrate software to make us a little more efficient and effective, so that's a big piece of this. And in working with some of the grant monies that we have, as you know, a literacy grant was written. I did not include it in this as part of our spend because we haven't spent it yet. We just got it. So it'll be included in next year's update. Those types of things that we're doing now are giving us the opportunity to look at the data, analyze the data without having teachers sitting entering data into spreadsheets and then trying to figure out how to manipulate the data to determine where their kids fall. Now we'll be able to we're using a software that we just got up and running. Thank you to our elementary teachers who just took the ball and ran with it. They got our software called Amplify, and it basically visualizes all of that data you saw when they presented it about the literacy. So now all the data from the beginning of the school year is up and running in this system. We'll be able to print out reports so that even individual kids, we can look at where they stand, how they're doing, and then keep track of some of the things that are happening. So literacy has been a heavy focus for us. It will continue to be as we try to kind of revamp the losses, if you will, from the past few years, but also in really organizing our literacy programs and giving a really strong look at equity. We realize through walkthroughs, as you know, we do walkthroughs several times a week. I walk with the principals and special ed director and the director of curriculum in and out of schools constantly, and we're seeing these disparities in different places that people aren't even aware of. If you're a third grade teacher in each of the 3 buildings, you might have different materials to teach the same thing. So we're working towards that. We've bought new sets of books, new sets of materials that teachers can use, and we're planning to do that right now. We're getting ready for a pilot program that new grant money will help us to start up. We have a very slim window. We made the mistake of asking for money, and we got it, and they asked us to finish the whole thing by June 30th. So they are really going crazy right now, trying to get in materials and get in the pilots. But we did meet with all the teachers last Wednesday. 21 teachers at the elementary level volunteered to pilot the program. That is awesome. That gives us a great look at the 2 programs that we're wrestling with, and then we'll go back to the state and figure out the final costs for what we decide to implement. And then the 4th one, inclusion, co-teaching for students with disabilities and English learners. This is a goal of the district. We set this goal primarily for secondary so that they could go back to work that was done pre-COVID. They have been working with their curriculum leaders, classroom teachers. Again, we're doing walkthroughs. Administrators are doing walkthroughs with curriculum leaders, and they're actually tracking in a document where they see the inclusive practices happening in the classroom, so that we can start to say, okay, we see it 70% of the time in this particular content area, but only 20% of the time in this particular content area, and you can now do comparisons. All of the curriculum leaders and administrators are in the same room, having the same conversation. So that's really the direction with that. The one piece we went back and forth with the state on is when we filled out our budget items, we were trying to quantify how 7 curriculum leaders, you know, what portion of their time was used, and they said, leave it blank, just put it on there so we know. I said, okay, fine, because it's just really not all of their job. They have to do all kinds of other things, so that's why you'll see some of those as blank. And then the final closeout, the commitment for the state is, if you didn't choose reaching out and better connecting with your families, they chose it for you at the end. So we basically repeated some of this, and we used it to really give a little more detail to our family connections, talked about our metrics, and then we're at the point now where this report is ready to be submitted. We have between now and April 1st to clean it up, which I still have a few more little things just to double check on. We want to add in a little more about Amplify. We just got it running last week, but then submit it before the deadline of April 1st, and that just requires the okay from the committee.
So just on a, so are you looking for a vote tonight?
I am.
Okay, so, and we would make that vote with the ability for you to make a couple of changes, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
It's really updates. I just want to update it because we literally got this software running Monday. So.
All right.
Can we
Okay.
make a motion?
Maybe before we craft the motion, maybe we'll just, does anyone have any clarifying questions? Anna?
This is really great, especially in comparison, oh, sorry. This is really great, especially in comparison to last year's submission, like the difference is really night and day. One question I have, and maybe it's just, I guess 2 questions. So the selection of the subgroups, if I remember from the last time you talked about this, it's not that there's not a recognition there are other potential subgroups, but these are the subgroups that our data is showing need the most support, given sort of the composition of our district.
Correct.
Okay. And again, as you always hear me say, I like the fact that there's a lot more emphasis on supporting the subgroups, and I like the fact that you use the word equity over and over and over, and you reference the equity of it. And again, just to always be mindful, this report shows that we understand that the Student Opportunity Act is about equity and not equality, and that is a major change that I'm supportive of. One sort of minor question, for the evidence-based programs, you have to list the number of students served, and we have the number 337 twice, the number 443 once, and I think another 200 something other nuns, and I'm just curious to know what's the variation between those numbers and how did we come up with them?
Sure. So if you remember, actually I can probably just show a demo here real quick. If you go to that first page where the sample charts are, I'll put that up so other people here can see it as well. This information that, when you go to visit the template, this information here is filled in for, it's really hard to see. In the top right corner, you choose a year and a grade, and it changes with each of the years. So as we look at, let me try to zoom in here on this ELA, on the far left side, the top one is students with disabilities. That number is a percentage, and if you're looking at percents or averages, you're looking at portions of kids. So not every single student with a disability falls in to certain categories, just as not every student who is considered economically disadvantaged by the state falls into a category like that. They could be higher in their score, so we have to actually pull the entire list and then go through and functionally pull out the numbers related to what we picked. So that's why they're different. And like I said, there is crossover.
Yeah.
So when you start to look at all of the, if you took all of the special ed kids, all of the kids with IEPs, all of the kids in the L programs, all of the kids with economically disadvantaged, all of the kids in those groups that we picked, they don't all fall into the category of
Right, for
need.
the-
So that's why it changes.
Okay, that makes sense. No, I think it's great, and I really applaud the effort and the detail, and again, the focus on equity, and referencing too, I like the fact that you're talking about the conclusion of the audit will inform the next steps, because that's always been sort of one of the themes of the last year or so, is we haven't really ever done an audit, so we don't really know what we're looking at.
Right.
But once we have it in hand, we'll have a much better sense of how to target next year, so, great, thank you.
I think it's important to note that this also is one other piece of evidence for strategic planning. This is an important piece of it. And as I said, those areas where we're checking the boxes in the multiple choice area, those for me are gold. To be able to take those and say, here we are, year one. Take them again next year. Take another look at them. It gives us give it to all the principals, they can look at their staffs, and then really get a really strong view of where we're going.
Michelle Bailey, did you have a question?
No, there's just a weird sound. I wasn't sure what it was.
That was me.
Okay.
Okay. Are you good?
Yeah, it just was a weird sound.
Like a wild animal sound?
No, it's like
when the
rustling, or,
Yeah, like there's
it's
like a
almost like
raccoon
somebody's
running through
rolling
the
something
vents.
over the roof, yeah.
We're getting the roof fixed.
It's that boiler.
That's what it's like to be in a classroom with people working on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does this while the teacher's trying to teach.
Do other people have questions, clarifying questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Julia?
I want to say also echo exactly what Anna said. I think this is night and day, and we've talked about it, how it's completely a huge improvement from the last SOA report, but also something I specifically liked that I saw in here is that the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator is going to be tasked with a lot of this, because I know that was a huge piece of contention in the budget last year. People didn't really understand that position. They weren't sure why we needed someone separate. And I had always said there's so many other opportunities here to reach out to people that have not been actively engaged. So I loved seeing that like in the report in black and white, and I think that's very encouraging. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, so Eric, let's try to help Julia to craft her motion here.
I would just make a motion to authorize the superintendent to submit the SOA, the Student Opportunities Act report.
Okay, so if that were the motion, then people would understand that there might be some editing.
Okay. I move that the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee authorize the superintendent to submit the FY22 SOA amendment for DESE.
Second.
Second by David Polito. All right. Is there further discussion? All right, looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Okay. Eric, you are up again on Portrait of the Graduate.
Seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. We started the journey into the Portrait of the Graduate, and started out with a huge number of people. We had about 48 people, I think, on the original committee. That dwindled down over time to about 40 in the final group, between 38 and 40. And this report represents the work that was done, kind of the process that was undertaken, and then the final project of the actual Portrait of the Graduate. So there's a summary that outlines what we did. There's some of the data that was collected through the group workshops. And I think it's important to note that the workshops, every time we met, were mixed up differently. So different groups of people got to meet with different people than they met with the previous meeting. So it really gave some credence to the conversations, and the project was driven all the way up until really a few weeks ago. We got stalled a couple of times due to weather. We had to cancel once due to weather, or October wind weather day, you know, those types of things. So it got slowed down a little bit, and it got slowed down a second time when we were not happy with the graphics that were supplied to us by the consultant group. So we went to the kids, and they pulled it off. They really hit a home run, because we didn't even want to bring the original graphics to the group. We were a little bit unhappy, I guess is the only way I can describe it. But we did, and we got the answers we thought we were going to get about them. So we asked everybody to give us some time to give it to kids and let them make it work, and they really did. We had a whole bunch of kids in the graphic design 2 class at the high school jump on the project, not knowing anything other than I gave them the 6 areas. At that time it was 7. We were still trying to hone in on it, and then they came up with this graphic, which I think really is representative of the portrait and is something that we can all share and use as we communicate the message about what a graduate looks like coming through our school system. From pre-K to 12, these are the things we work on at every single grade level, and these are the things that our community, remember, this was a community deal. We had community members, we had parents, we had students, we had, although we would love to have had a lot more students. We had administrators, we had teachers, all part of this group. And this is the final product of their work, and really another foundational piece of strategic planning. As we move forward with strategic planning, this is another brick in the wall for us to be able to start to make connections to and really highlight as the skill set when we have those kids walk over the stage and we hand them their diploma. I think we can all look at these and say, these are the things that we know will help our kids to transfer into life to be successful. And I really appreciate the work of the group. The group, they mashed it out. Some days it was really tough conversations, and there was disagreement and agreement, and we finally got to here. So we've come to the conclusion of our graduates will be able to independently use their learning to adapt and persevere, to communicate, to think critically, to be empathetic, to be collaborative, and be lifelong learner. And for us, those are transfer skills that will transfer anything these kids do in their life. Anything they do, whatever career path they choose, whatever academic or non-academic path they choose, these skills are, we believe as our committee, they'll be with them forever, and they'll help kind of support their success as they go through the future. So I just wanted to present the report. This is really the first public viewing of the whole thing. I really see this as a stone, kind of a piece of the puzzle, if you will. As we grow this strategic plan next year, here is another piece of evidence. One, you've seen 2 now tonight. These are really strong pieces of evidence to share with the community. I envision these around the community. I feel like, I was having a conversation with Tom. We have a great use for all those, those mask signs that we bought? We have a great use now for those signs to be able to create these and put them up. But also, if you go into Crosby's or Dunkin' Donuts or a restaurant, if that's in a window, people start to talk about our schools, and that's what we should be proud of. And this is something we can all be proud of.
Okay. All right, questions? Anna?
I have a question. I have 2 questions. The first one is, are we going to get a discount from Battelle since our own student graphic designers improved upon the graphics that the professionals gave us?
We had that conversation, didn't we?
I'm serious.
We are still working with them.
I mean, I never liked that bid. I think I voted against it when it came up, but to know that their graphics were actually hot garbage and our students could do better makes me even more angry about it, so I just want to note that. This is more of a semantics question, but I'm wondering if it's deliberate or if it was accidental. So the first 3 words are, action verbs: adapt, persevere, communicate, think. Why did you switch then to sort of the passive, be empathetic, be collaborative, instead of empathize, collaborate, learn? Is that on purpose, or am I just being a little bit too caught up in the weeds?
It was really, if you read the sentence, be able to independently use their learning to be, you know, lifelong learner, we've struggled with these.
But
These went through probably 5 or 6 iterations to basically fit that sentence. We were trying to make it.
But do you see my point?
Yeah.
The first verb, communicate, could be as easily interchanged as collaborate.
Yep.
So I guess I'm just observing it as being the first 3 are very active and very strong, and the last 3 are a little more passive.
Not purposeful, they were really done, it was really, I don't know, maybe, there were probably 5 or 6 or maybe 7 different iterations of this. They went to individual people, they went to small groups of people, they kept coming around. They were even much longer than the descriptors are now. They were 6 and 7 bullet points long, and we felt like, so we were trying to make it concise and also make it fit that all graduates of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District will be able to independently use their learning to be collaborative, and that's what we came down to, really, rather than saying use their learning to collaborate. We could have gone in that direction too.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not purposeful, it was really just
Just how it worked out.
Well, it was the will of the group. We really went with where people were at and what they thought made
Well, it's
sense.
always fun to group edit with 40 people,
Oh,
too.
yeah.
I'm sure that
It
was
very exciting.
amazing, so.
Online and in person.
Michelle Horgan. Go first. No?
Mine's kind of simple. So under communicate, like there's nothing here that talks about sort of being a citizen of the world and being able to communicate across cultures or language barriers or anything like that. I was just curious, did it come up at all that world language or foreign language was an important topic?
It was more of, if you go back to the visual, the global theme kept coming up, more of, not necessarily like multilingual, but it was more about the global theme. So we try to fit it there and keep it somewhat generic, where range of purposes and audiences is where everybody could agree. We could really get people to say, yeah, okay, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, because if I was trying to make a decision about our budget and I looked at this, I would get the impression that those were not important to our community. And I just wanted to be sure that that's what this means. Okay.
Michelle Horgan?
Yeah, I just wanted to say before 2020, those of us that were on the school committee, the leadership team presented to us what school could be and what the leadership team envisioned with other teachers what school could be. And I just find it very interesting that working with our community and leadership team, you came up with this, and it echoes what you guys were thinking about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years ago. And I just think it speaks volumes about our leadership team, our teachers, and our community, that they can come together after a huge gap in our learning and our world and still realize what we can do and what we should be doing and moving forward. So just thank you for doing this. I think it really speaks volumes about us and our community.
If I could just jump in and echo on that, I will say as the parent of adult children, I looked at this, and to Michelle's point about it being a community-based, I really thought, yeah, like if you have adult children and you feel like they can do all these things and they are, then yeah, like that's, so it really it really rang true to someone in that. And I hope that, I guess I'm trying really to compliment the group for creating something that I think.
They did a great job.
That I guess being on the other end, that like, I agree that these would be the skills that, that you would feel like, yeah, like was a successful education.
Yeah, we have the advantage of seeing this in action now. So,
Right.
And again, it goes back. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And and it's not just 3, 4, 5, 6, it's 10, 15 years, and it continues, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I think having a consistent leadership team, as we have for the last couple of years, is also key to that continued success.
What's the next step?
So the next step is really the marketing piece, which is, as we probably can all admit, we do not do well. So that's really my issue to deal with, understanding how to market our school district. And I think it's getting the message out, sharing it wide and far, if you will, starting to integrate it. We need to integrate this. So if we're looking at a curriculum document that serves first grade, a first grade teacher has every right to say, well, this is about a graduate. I don't think I have a hand in a graduate, which if you just go to our literacy work, you are fully involved in helping them to be good communicators down the road. So now we're connecting the dots for kids along the way, and teachers along the way, so that everybody has a part of the journey. Everybody has a piece of the journey. It might be a different size, different location, but everybody has a piece of the journey along the way. So we'll start to integrate that into our documents. We'll start to use this symbol and get that word out there. And I do believe, my goal is to get it into the community fairly quickly, however we decide to do that. But I just think it's important to raise the awareness of what is really going on behind those brick walls when you drive by our schools. You think about driving down Bay Road and you look at the high school and your middle school and you wonder what's going on in there today. So it's really an opportunity for the community to see what's really going on and what we expect of ourselves in this process of developing the young minds of our kids.
Anna?
I have the smallest observation. It's been bugging me as I'm looking at the graphic before we go get tattoos of it everywhere. And they're a designer. I know David's the designer. It looks like the hyphen is oriented towards the top, but because the word Hamilton is longer than the word Wenham, it's actually a little off kilter. Does anyone else see what I'm looking at? Like, it's so if the students are still able to get back to the vector file, my eye wants to balance the bottom of the H to the bottom of the M, not necessarily around the hyphen, because it looks crooked to me.
I would agree now that you point that out.
I'm sorry.
I mean, David, we'll defer to David, but it could be also that they thought, well, then you've got Hamilton on one side, Wenham on the other.
Well, I'm just, it makes my eye hurt a little bit, and I don't want it to hurt when I look at it, but it looks crooked because of that, I think.
It might work
You're gonna
worse.
get the tattoo though if we fix it?
What'd you say?
Will you get the tattoo if we fix it?
I mean, I could get one of each side, do like, which one do you like?
I mean, we can't assume that the kids didn't do it that way
That's
and
what
determine this
I know.
looks
Yeah,
better.
I can bring it back to them.
Because there is another thought process, right, that it's the middle, so the Hamilton.
The hyphen is in the middle, yeah.
I mean,
Which goes back to the hyphen shouldn't be there. Just saying.
I did that for you, Michelle. That was.
Writing on a circle is actually a pain in the butt. I can
Very
point out
difficult.
some other things on here too that drive me crazy as a designer, but
Again, take
I
it
think
off
look
the
great.
bill. No money to Battelle for that.
Yeah, believe me.
I will
Still
keep my
going.
mouth shut.
So, Eric, you don't need anything else from us on
I
this?
just wanted to
Okay.
show it off. I think,
Yep,
again,
thank
I really thank the committee for the work they did. It was hard work some nights, and it was agreeable work some other nights, and it was people stuck with it, which I think was important for me. I was a little worried as we just dragged along that we would lose people along the way, but we ended up with between 38 and 40 all the time in our meetings, which is
Very impressive.
testament of the process and the people involved. So
I always think it's interesting too when you see something that gets simplified to that point, and you're like, you put, how many people for how long to actually get something that's succinct is actually the difficult part, right? It would be easy to pull out a 100-page document with 40 people over the course of a couple of months, but to actually get it down to one page is indeed the hard work of it all. So really, really well done. I think it's very clear, concise, and it's a great goal for the district. That everyone coming in, parents, teachers, and students all have, sort of, this common goal now to be striving for. We know what we're working towards.
you just have to imagine in different places, open houses and different events that people go to, we can have this available. And even for people new to the district, here we are. Here's what we really.
Well, as corny of an idea as I thought that sign was at the beginning of the year, it really has come to play, and just having those things here, and just the idea of having this up around the school. will really just sort of get embedded in the minds of the community.
Yeah.
Right, and embedded in the conversation too, like what does it mean, when you have your third grader and you're saying, what does that look like, to think critically as a third grader, because we know we're building critical thinking all the way through, so.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, all right. So next on the agenda is a discussion regarding this superintendent's formative evaluation. I can lead off unless you want to. So a couple of weeks ago, Superintendent Tracy gave us some evidence. We gave some time for the committee to review all that. And those of us that went to the workshop just prior to this meeting regarding how to do an evaluation, we didn't talk extensively about this, but the idea being that normally a formative evaluation is halfway through. Of course, our superintendent didn't begin until October. So this would always be, at the halfway point, would always be just a partial submission that of evidence. And in this case, because the year is quite shortened, they're just to be knowledgeable that we're only looking at since October 1st. My goal in this discussion, or my hope in this discussion, is that I don't see it as being extensive. This is something that I'd love to hear, have the committee offer Eric some feedback and some maybe questions about some of the evidence that you saw. So I don't have a super lot of structure for that, but I'm going to try to give everybody an opportunity to talk maybe just for a couple of minutes. If you have any questions. I meant to say that I know that was a lot of information, and I know that all of you have had an opportunity, if you wanted it. I know that all of you have had an opportunity to speak with Eric one-on-one. And so it isn't necessary that we, again, because it's just to provide him with feedback so that when we get to the final evaluation, he has that feedback along the way. Julia.
I would say, and I have said this to Eric many times, that I'm constantly impressed by the updates, the weekly updates. And I've heard that from community members as well, that they feel that it's much warmer and accessible and personal. And I've also heard from several teachers, several people I know in the schools, that they're constantly seeing you out and about. You've been in the school, every school, constantly. You're always there. You're always a face there. So just the presence, and I feel like the level, not just the amount of communication, but the high level of communication and the personalization of it, I think has been a dramatic improvement, but also I've just thought that was very impressive. And I have heard that from members of the community. So, I'm not sure if you're submitting all of your updates as evidence, but we have all of them in the email, but I'll certainly be considering that when I'm doing my evaluation.
They're all in one link.
Yes.
And I'm actually, thank you, Julia. And I think Julia makes a good point, is that the evidence is really supposed to be just a representative.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good point, right? That you know that this one communication that's given as evidence is just one bit of evidence, but in reality, you have lots of experience with the communication. So that's actually important. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Anna?
I think in looking through the first set of evidence, you gave us 9 pages of fairly dense, bulleted, redacted evidence already, and that's not even the full slate of it. So I think the archivist to me likes how meticulous you are about keeping track about things, and I think that came up in our training is, how are we going to know what you're doing? And I said, well, it's sort of on Eric to keep track of what he's doing, and I think you're showing that that's happening. I totally agree about communication, and I think almost everyone in the community knows that I love all the syllables of all the words that ever could have been written, so I appreciate the length of your emails, and I think a lot of people do. But something I've noticed in you too that I'll just give you a little positive feedback on is more recently, and I noticed it especially at the Hamilton Select Board meeting, last week when you did the budget presentation, is that when you're asked a question that you could, and I'm going to be clear, this is not a criticism of Tom Gary, who was asked really hard questions that involved tens of millions of dollars, but you seem very quick to say, well, this is what I think, but I don't know everything, and this is what I'm going to learn. And there's sort of like an openness about what you know and what you don't know, but I also have been really impressed with the level of knowledge you are demonstrating and your past experience. But I get a really strong sense that you take a lot of ownership, and I get a real sort of like the buck stops here, and if there's a success, you're gonna have been a part of it, and if there's an area of improvement, I don't wanna use the word failure, that you're gonna own it, and you're gonna say, okay, well, we need to do this better. Even just a few minutes ago, you said, we need to do this better. We're not great on the marketing. I don't get any sense that you have a huge ego invested and you're willing to it really feels like you're pulling the heavy oar of the boat in the community. And I think it comes across in your communication, but also just the knowledge that you demonstrate when you could dodge, you could take a little bit of a duck and kind of say something vague. You tend not to. You tend to really call a spade a spade. I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? So again, we will expect that when we get to it, there'll be even more, even more for us to read. Excellent. Okay. Thank you all. Next up is the Peru trip discussion. Is that you too, Eric?
Yes, that's me again. Sorry. Hogging the limelight here.
It's good. It's all good.
So Peru's coming up, as we know. We've talked about this a few times. There are still the same number of families involved. There's still, everybody is still raring to go. I just promised you that I would bring it back one more time before we got to that point. They are still, Peru is a level 4 still. If you read into why they're a level 4, they are clearly for COVID, but also for acts of terrorism on the northern Colombian border, which is in the opposite direction of where our kids are. Our kids are actually in the southern part of Peru, so not involved in those border. There are actually cartel issues, I guess, that are occurring between Colombia and the Peruvian border in the northeast quadrant. So our kids are in the southern part of Peru. I think we've done everything we can with mitigation for COVID. I think all the parents understand what they're sending their kid. You heard Mrs. Mitchell said they understand. Kevin Sano has made it very clear. You got to be vaccinated. You got to be boosted. You're going to be wearing. I mean, they're taking a supply of our N95 masks with them. So all the protocols will be followed. And I think it's important to also, having been on the trip, it's amazing, and it'll really, talk about global. This gives kids an unbelievable view and perspective of some things that they may never ever see in their lives again. So I would recommend that we continue in the direction we're going and let parents decide if they want to send their kids or not. Right now they're all on board. That was yesterday's conversation with Kevin Sano.
I know that we've talked about it before, but I just want to make sure that that we're really certain that parents are clear that, if the trip were canceled by the company, that they're clear on their financial responsibilities.
The trip were canceled by the company, it would become the company's issue.
That's my point.
Everybody's very clear on that.
Yeah. Michelle.
Could you just let us know what is the plan should someone take a COVID test to come back to the U.S. and they do not pass, they get a positive?
Yeah. So as you guys, I can't remember when we did, but you requested another chaperone. We added another chaperone. So the World Strides also has 2 people, one person that travels with the group and one person that's on the ground in country. So we have really 2 outlets. If a student gets sick and can't fly, or they test positive and can't fly, we have somebody that can stay behind with them, our own person and a World Strides person, so they would stay
Excellent.
At whatever hotel that would be. World Strides has done a really good job at trying to meet all of the needs while also being realistic about costs.
Yeah, I think, so having looked at what level the countries are. Pretty much the whole world is at a level 4, according to the United States. And, personally, just having been in Spain, different countries take things more seriously than others. I think Spain was taking it way more seriously than the United States, and it could be that Peru takes it very seriously too, because they don't have access to the level of medicine that we do. I don't know, but I don't want to deny any kid this opportunity.
Our kids are also in higher end hotels. They're really well taken care of by. I was very impressed with the places that we stayed around the country as we traveled. It was very unexpected when I kind of got there and we went to the first hotel. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. One of the places they stay is a villa, and we were the only group there, so that's helpful as well.
Yeah.
Do they need more chaperones?
I'll let you ask.
Michelle?
Just, we as a district have put everything in place, and now it's, like you said, Eric, it's the parents' choice, and that's it.
Anybody else? Okay, and we don't, there's no action needed, right? Okay. Okay, next up, I think we have Vinny on the E&D certification. So pretty.
Can we do that for him? We get him a MacBook so he doesn't have to
Lovely.
go hardwire.
You won't do it. You won't do it.
No.
The money guys are all Excel people.
That's true. Evan would never get Mac anything.
Okay, so tonight I'm here to officially announce to you that our E&D was certified. In addition, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our E&D calculation and end with a summary of the past year and the timeline. So just to begin, for those of you who don't know, the definition of E&D per the DOR, which is the Department of Revenue, excess and deficiency is the amount by which cash, accounts receivable, and other assets exceed a regional school district's liabilities and reserves. In my own words, I like to say it's just the amount of money that's left over at the end of the fiscal year. In other words, it's kind of a profit or surplus, or it's our loss or deficit at the end of the year. So there are three main components to E&D when you calculate it. Just to start, it's obviously our beginning balance. So effective July 1st, 2020, the school district had a beginning balance of roughly $1.2 million. From there, and from previous budget presentations that I've done, you've heard me talk multiple times about two different sides of a budget. You have your revenue side and your expenditure side. When building a budget, obviously both of them have to match. And when you, at the end of the year, when you go to calculate E&D, both of those components come into play. So the first item, which is the second item on this list, is our revenues. So we budget a certain amount of revenues during the year. By the end of the year, whatever revenues receive above our budget get closed to E&D. So at the end of FY21, we closed approximately $910,000 above our budgeted revenues. As many of you know, this is primarily our Chapter 70. Chapter 70 alone, we received roughly $770,000 above what we budgeted. On top of that, I believe we received about $50,000 above Medicaid and another $70,000 from unanticipated unspent prior year encumbrances. The third item to close to E&D is our unexpended expenditures. So during the year, we budget an approximate amount that we think we're going to expend during the year. But when the year ended last year, we did not expend approximately $2.2 million in predicted expenditures. This was obviously due to COVID-19 and the closures of schools. We had much expenditures left over in our special ed transportation, upwards of almost $400,000, as well as leftover health insurance premiums, professional development, as well as nearly $500,000 in salaries left over at the end of the year. So you take all three of these items, they all close to E&D, which leaves an ending balance at June 30 of roughly $4.3 million. So this is our starting point for our E&D during the year. So now I'm going to move forward to a brief timeline so you guys can kind of see what happens to E&D throughout the year. So on June 30th of 2021, the end of fiscal year 21, the district closed $4.3 million to E&D, like you saw on the previous slide. On June 30th and prior to June 30th, the state considers our E&D audited and certified, therefore it's available for use for the district if we need to. But as soon as July 1st comes, it's kind of put away into a box and closed off. This is what we call E&D being unaudited and not certified. It's not available for use. We have to wait for time to progress and for two things to occur. So the first thing is P&S, which is Powers & Sullivan, our audit firm. They come in from roughly July 1st through the beginning of October, and they audit our financial statements. So they'll go through those three items I mentioned to you before. They verify that the amounts I reported is what matches cash. They wrap that up just about in the October timeframe. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer, but generally speaking, that they're done with all their field work in October. Then beginning of October to the midpoint, me, the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Administration, works on our E&D. So I put together a package that must be submitted to the DOR. It includes all of our bank statements, profit and loss, all of our prior year expenditures, and many forms that must be submitted to the state. At this point, as soon as that's wrapped up, it's the same time our audit is wrapped up. So once October passes, our E&D is considered audited, but not yet certified. The people who certified it is the DOR, the Department of Revenue. So about October, I believe 29th, I submitted our E&D for certification. It sat with the DOR for about 5 months until around February 1st. I contacted them and explained to them there was an urgency to have it certified, as we needed to include it in our budget that you passed in the middle of February. So on February 1st or 2nd, they sent an email to me, to Eric, and the Select Board, as well as the FinCom, certifying our E&D at around $4.3 million. So at this point, they now consider our E&D audited, and it is now certified and available for use by the district. At that point, between February 1st and I believe February 27th, we utilized that E&D. So we included $3.1 million in our FY23 budget, which now brought our final E&D balance right now down to $1.3 million. At this point, it's available for use if there are any emergencies that arise between now and June. But once June 30 comes, this cycle starts all the way over again, and we will not have access to it till, again, about February 1st of 2023. So this is just kind of a brief timeline and an overview of how our E&D works. I hadn't officially presented this to you as being certified. I did sneak it into one of our budget presentations in February, but I didn't formally announce that it was kind of audited and certified. So that's what I'm completing tonight. So that kind of wraps up the overview of E&D and the timeline, if anyone has any questions about that.
Michelle?
It's not a question. I'm just going to make a statement that in 15 or so years of coming to meetings, this is the first time I've really seen that laid out in a way that people can understand that E&D is not like a slush fund or money we can access all the time to do stuff. Like, it's money you can pretty much use to offset the next year's budget, because the time that you have it available to use is very limited. So I think this is a great visual to continue using.
Thank you.
Anna?
I agree. Could we have that, because it's not one of the exhibits on the agenda, is it possible to link that? Because I think that Michelle is right, the public, this is probably the hardest things I have to try to explain to members of the public is what is E&D, and this is super helpful.
I would echo that, and not just the public, but I think that, you know, a couple of times a year, just show that to us. It's helpful. Like, it's
a sign.
No, because it really is, like, you can hold it in your head, but this is so much easier to, it's a great visual.
I was going through it with Larry and Eric, and I decided to add this in to obviously help.
No,
so.
yeah, and it was a hit.
Can I add maybe one more thing that might be a little confusing this year, where we have such a large E&D, and we have that 3.1 million going to offset and not necessarily back to the towns? That can be a little confusing on why, I know we discussed it in earlier meetings, on why actually returning the entirety of the E&D would actually be detrimental to the towns. You know, I don't know if you want to put together a little something right here, but maybe even add that in there too, just to explain, because while it's very bad, you know, we really don't want to have that much money left over at the end of the year. And, you know, the short answer might be like, oh, we'll just turn it, you know, send it back and we can lower the tax rate. That actually is makes it very difficult for the future. And I know a lot of us up here understand that, but for people at home who might not understand it as well. Do you mind just giving a brief overview of that?
Yep, right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, if you've got like a elevator version of it.
Yep, so at the end of the day, the money, E&D, one of the other rules that I did not mention, is a school district can only hold on to 5% of your annual budget relative to E&D. So in terms of round numbers, our budget is just under $40 million. We're only allowed to keep 5% of that. We have an internal rule where we will only keep 3% of that. That is roughly what the 1.3 million equates to. So we have our internal policy that says we will only hold on to 1.3 million. Everything above that, we return back to the towns as a revenue source within our budget. So as I said before, when you build your budget, you have to have a balanced set of revenues and a balanced set of expenditures. But for this year, we have an infusion of an extra $3.1 million as a one-time revenue source. So from year to year, if you were to plug in $3.1 million and take it off your $40 million, it's going to reduce your budget year over year, or your assessment year over year for the following year. But the year after that, that one-time revenue source of $3.1 million goes away. So now the town has to appropriate an extra $3 million in the year after, and from year over year, an extra $3 million could equate to almost a 16% increase from one year to the next. So just at town meeting, the following year, you're presented with a budget of almost a 16% increase, even though it's skewed and it's not real reality, because the prior year you had a one-time influx of revenue. It looks detrimental, and it looks like we've, you know, increased our budget dramatically, which is why this year we've proposed to offset it with the one-time OPEB investment to also help save future budgets.
Great, thank you so much.
Hopefully I summarized that.
So it's very helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, anything else? All right, thank you.
Vinny.
All right. So next, we have the town budget of the flyer. I don't know who is that. I don't know who's speaking to that.
I could do it, yeah.
It's the max, it's magic.
No.
I'll say something about it, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
So the Finance Working Group had a theme about investing in the future, and we tasked Vinny with finding a very inexpensive and highly qualified person with experience at creating these. And so he asked David to do it. So David has been working on this mostly with Vinny. I did see it a couple days ago, and David made a few updates to it. But yet again, David has created something that summarizes what we all know in a way that someone sitting in an audience can understand it in less than 30 seconds. So hopefully, the people out there maybe can say, hey, yeah, I do, I understand it in less than 30 seconds.
Do I need to make a motion?
Thank you.
Is this a vote on it? No.
Well,
kind of, because this is going to be like an official
I
publication.
do think we need to, yeah, I
would love for you guys to just look through it, make sure it says everything that you guys want. I do have to give Michelle Bailey credit for the idea for the stack graph in the front was actually hers. I wouldn't have thought to represent it that way, but I think it worked really well once I figured out.
7th grade math.
How I wanted to do it.
Can I point
I
something
think
out?
Illustrator would
Yeah.
be easier to
Yeah.
do something like that. But
Benny, go ahead.
Just because we just talked about E&D, you can see it's labeled there in the pink. In the prior 4 budgets, it's not represented at all, and that's because it was such a small amount in the prior years that it wouldn't fit on there. So you can see it's kind of that one-time influx of revenues this year.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for that, and I think that's, part of the whole idea is that this sheet of paper is telling the story of what is this budget, and it's really helpful. In years past, it's been really helpful to have, at town meeting, to have people sort of be able to just have this physically in hand. So, go ahead, Anna.
So we're going to have a motion. I just have a couple of questions for David.
I have some logistical questions on the motion, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. So before we get there, I'll just point out, hyphen, no hyphen. We have it both ways, so we should probably decide. I'm just going to put it out there. There's one spot that I wonder if maybe we want to explain. So under the reductions on the very bottom, the first one says out-of-district tuitions, and it's quite clear. And then later it says special ed out-of-district transportation, but it's the shorthand. I might suggest either spelling it out both places, or after the first instance where you have more room, put parentheses out-of-district, because I can see people not knowing and saying, what on earth is special ed ood transportation? I think you might just want to clarify what you're talking about.
no problem.
I think you're right. That's much, my question for the committee, I just, in other words, what are our logistics in terms of, how do we get it printed? Who's in charge of that? How do we get it?
It gets printed up at the high school.
Okay.
I'll get it printed.
Okay. All right, but with the goal of these are to be distributed at town meeting, correct? Yeah.
Yes, it has to be approved by both town moderators. So
Okay, so, see, these are the logistics I'm looking for,
if you guys are okay with it and you approve it and there's no edits or whatever the final edits are, I'll send it off to the 2 towns tomorrow for their moderators to review. Once they approve it,
great.
I'll get them all printed and bring them over to both town halls before town.
That was the clarity that I was looking for, exactly, thank you.
There is a deadline, and
Okay.
they need to have it in their hands.
Yeah.
We have to keep that in mind.
Can I just ask, though, if it's going to be a town meeting, do we need to say, please attend town meeting in Hamilton and Wenham?
Isn't that what it
does say that.
says? Please attend town meeting in Hamilton.
That's the little green people thing.
But they're going to be there already at town meeting to get this.
Oh, well, but I think it's possible that they might be just available
That's
other
a
places
recycled
ahead.
graphic, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've seen that before. But, so when you're going to talk now, once you're going to talk to groups or the like, you can have this. Hopefully, we can get some of them printed soon. And also, you can start taking little clips of it and putting it on social media if you, social media. I don't know what that is, post.
All right. Shall we have a motion?
I move that we accept the town meeting budget infographic flyer.
Do we
The
wanna
2022?
Say,
And that we
and authorize David or David to edit?
And
Do we wanna-
authorize Dave Polito to edit it if it needed.
And
And printing.
Vinny to distribute it
And
to the
authorize
towns.
Vinny to distribute it to the towns.
Excellent. Do we have a
Everything.
second?
Okay.
Second.
Second by Michelle Bailey. All right, lovely. That was
It was a good group motion.
good motion. Right, is there any further discussion? Okay.
I just had a question on, because I've got it up and I'm editing as we speak. Hamilton, all right, never mind. I think I got it now. So it was the hyphen and then the OOD, right?
Yep.
That's what I heard?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, the only other one I saw that might be the ELL, but
Yeah,
That
I
might be a
didn't love
space
that,
thing.
but
That might
it
have
was
been a space
whatever.
thing, I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, are we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
so much.
And I was saying to Julia, I haven't actually done some design work and probably since the last one of these. So I'm not teaching art anymore.
Iterations kept coming, though.
That's how it happens.
So the next item on the agenda is the second reading and potential vote on the flag policy. I'm gonna introduce a little bit if you.
Sure.
So for those of you who are, I don't typically introduce, but there was a lot of confusion in my email box today about this policy. And there was a lot of so I guess I'm going to try to take some responsibility and say that people did not understand that this had been something that actually we have been discussing since last May. And I, as the chair, want to make clear that part of the role of the chair is to create the agenda. And I take responsibility for this agenda. There were suggestions that this hasn't been on previous agendas, and that's not true. It was in fact discussed at a recent agenda 2 meetings ago. But I do hear the feedback that for whatever reason, the public did not know that or recognize that this had been discussed and that this had been out there for a long time. So I got a lot of feedback that this was something that people had no idea was going to happen, and that happened very suddenly to them. And it's something I'm going to do some thinking about, how to communicate that better. I think there's also a lot of confusion about what this actual flag policy says. It is printed, attached as an exhibit. I don't have a lot to say about how to undo that, because it's there. That's what it says. So, all right, with that being said, I guess before we start discussion, maybe we'll just have a motion so that we can open discussion.
I move that the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District adopt the flag policy as written.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
For discussion, yeah.
Okay. All right, so I don't know if I really don't have a good sense of whether each person has something that they want to say or not, so I will open it up to brief comments. Julia.
I don't know if this is brief, but I wrote down some notes because I agree with you. I think there's a lot of confusion over what the policy is and what it says and what we are allowed and not allowed to do. So, government, it's about government speech. So government speech doctrine says that the government is exempt from First Amendment challenges to its own speech, which means it can refuse to display things like religious symbols on its property and not be sued for viewpoint discrimination. In Meyer O'Connell's letter, he wrote, government speech must meet 3 criteria, and the one at issue here is whether or not government has maintained control of the speech in question. And when people are saying that there was a lawsuit in Boston, the lawsuit in Boston was because the City Hall rubber stamped 284 flags without looking at them. So that is not considered maintaining control of the speech in question. So I see 3 possible policies moving forward. One is the current proposal, which is unquestionably constitutional. Any flag decisions made would be immune from legal challenges, but it would tie up the school committee in endless flag requests, including by those who would issue such requests to make a political point. And the current policy doesn't even define what a flag is, which really concerns me. Is a banner a flag? Is a poster a flag? Is that banner up there, is that considered a flag? And also, is an image of a flag a flag? So if I'm doing a report on Russia and there's a Russian flag on the screen, does that consider a display of a flag on school property? The second policy that we could adopt is the one where only US and Massachusetts flags are adopted, expressly forbidding all others. I believe this would hobble our mission in a number of ways. Again, what is a flag? And what if we decide that we want to adopt other flags for other educational reasons, POW, MIA? What if an Army recruiter comes to the school and puts something over a table at a career day event? What is a flag and what is not a flag? We're going to get tied up constantly in these questions. So the third option is the one that I consider the most reasonable and the one that I would encourage us to adopt. And it's a policy that gives discretion to the superintendent within certain straightforward guidelines. So example, the flag must meet the school district's educational mission and be displayed for no more than such and such days. So we can take pieces of this policy, but put it under the superintendent's discretion. And this way, we satisfy the control of speech test to qualify as government speech, which helps us avoid lawsuits, and it avoids us having to get involved in every decision about which flag to fly and what a flag is.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to write that all down. So.
All right. Anybody else? Anna?
I think I can help answer one question that you raised about what defines a flag, because we spent so much time talking about that and revising it. So one of the key words up at the top where it says this policy applies to any publicly visible flag displayed on property under the school committee's jurisdiction. We hemmed and hawed about what does publicly mean, and we really did mean for it to mean the outdoor flagpoles.
Okay.
Because, even though there are flags and symbols, that banner, although it's in a public building, in a public space, it's not like it's visible to the entirety of the public, if that makes sense. So,
well, I would argue that it is, because people can come to the school committee meeting.
They could, absolutely, but it's not like outwardly visible. So, Michelle and Eric can definitely jump in, but my understanding when we talked about it was meant to be publicly. And then to your last point about other flags, where it says point number 6, request to fly other types of displays are subject to the superintendent, et cetera, et cetera. that would sort of cover other things that are not flags, or one of those scenarios that was raised was, well, what if someone takes a flag and puts it onto a different piece of material that's not flown like a flag? Like, what does that mean exactly? And then the other thing just to be mindful of is that flag code would govern everything. If it's on, if it's on a flag pole, that's what the flag code is for, so.
So these wouldn't be flags. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, because they're not flown on poles. I'm just saying, I think it's opening us up to hours of this kind of discussion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
Well, I have something else to say. So that, I just want to make sure that sort of answered the question. So that was where the.
So it's only publicly flown outside flags on a flagpole.
That was the way that it was intended to be written, in a way that sort of council has interpreted it, because otherwise, to your point, we don't want to have Eric having to come to us for permission anytime someone wants to put a flag up or talk about something. Or I would assume at some point maybe there are even Ukrainian flags in the schools right now. Like, I don't even know what's going on in the schools, but that is a scenario that we did not want to have to come back to the school committee. I mean, what I will say is I agree with a lot of what you said, that it's about control. So if we go back in time, if I can pick up on what you said, when we first brought this forward last May, the request to the policy subcommittee was, well, we just made a decision about flying a flag and we had no policy. Would you please go make a policy? And so policy subcommittee went off and made a policy, and that's what we have. And I said, even at the time, I said, we don't have to have any policy. A lot of districts don't. A lot of bodies don't, because to your point, the principle of government speech is not affected by our policy. The city of Salem paints the sidewalks, or the crosswalks. They don't have a policy on sidewalk paint. They just do it. So to some degree, if you lean into the principle of government speech, we're the governmental body. We can say what we want. That's even in the legal opinion. Interestingly, Dana at one point had said, I really want a policy, and then the last meeting was I'm not sure if we need a policy. It's we actually don't. Government speech does not require policy. So I could honestly go either way. I feel good about the work the policy subcommittee did. I think we did our job.
Yes, I don't want to say that you didn't work for hours and hours and hours on this. I would also say that how I feel about this. I feel that we should be leaders, and I feel like we should be making these hard decisions, but I worry that we are going to be sucked into this whirlpool of 10,000 people submitting flag requests just out of spite, maybe, or just out of any kind of reason to tie us up and have us continue to talk about flags. That's why I think we would be within our rights to just let Eric do it. I trust Eric. I think Eric is very.
My only thought about that is that Eric is not government. Eric is an employee of the district, so I think that the notion that the government is choosing to speak, I'm not sure that would actually pass the litmus test, because Eric is not a publicly elected official.
But we would approve the policy.
So I'm going to just interrupt for 1 second. What I'm hearing is, and you tell me if I'm right, but I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing what I'm hearing here is that if we were to not adopt a flag policy, we would be actually in the state that we are right now, which is that while the school committee could still choose to exercise government speech, in the absence of the school committee choosing to do that, all of the operational decisions are under the superintendent right now. That is what currently happens. It sounds to me like, Julia, you might be offering another option, which is a new policy, not the policy that's here, but a policy that specifically gives the superintendent. Is that correct?
Yes, and has guidelines that we voted on and approve. So what I understood from this was that would be maintaining control, so we would not run into any lawsuits.
And I'm hearing that, and I'm just gonna as part of a meeting, that would be a separate motion.
Yes.
Right. So I'm just gonna say the motion right now, and I appreciate your comment, but the motion right now is up or down on this flag policy that we have before us. So was I reading all that correctly? I do want to make sure that everybody else gets an opportunity.
Right, no, my only other thought, though, is just for the public to understand, is that even if we don't do this policy at all, which honestly I could take or leave, if we want to do a policy, it's not a bad one, but I've never felt like we had to have it. If we do as Julie's suggesting, which operationally is kind of already what happens. The superintendent is operationally in charge of the district. That doesn't preclude anyone in the school committee at any time making a motion to say, I want to fly this flag, because we are the governmental body. So the presence or absence of a policy does not govern government speech at all, which is why I raised the point of Salem, or, you know, when Obama put lights on the White House. I don't think there's a policy that talks about lights on the White House. Like, the government does what the government does. That's the point of government speech. So that's the point I want to make really clear to the public. If we can have it or not, it doesn't actually limit our ability to speak as the voice of the government.
Right, I want to make sure everybody else gets an opportunity to speak, should they want to.
I really don't want to touch this, especially with an election in 3 weeks. But, you know, I've been sitting here thinking and sort of weighing both sides. You know, why are we creating a policy when we've existed for this long without one? But one, I think it's important to remember that that is our job, right, is to create policies for the district. And what came up tonight, like, I'm not, you know, I could say that I'm not really in love with this policy, and it's not from the lack of work, right? So but it's, you know, when Ms. Hurst spoke, it actually, there was something that she said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it actually reminded me of another tough policy that we had to go through a few years ago about naming rights around the district, and that was what you would think would be a seemingly easy conversation. And it went on for quite some time, you know, and inevitably, like, we really don't name things after people in our district now, and there's a lot of good reason behind that. But it wasn't a very popular decision, but we had to sort of go through and do the work. I think we're doing the work. I think we've been doing the work for a long time, which, you know, a lot of the work we do, right, gets unnoticed. It's only when it becomes sort of this hot button issue that, like, oh my God, it's happening right now. Like, well, it's been months in the making, right? And that's just the nature of what we do. But, you know, and then we sort of do the work, we bring it out here, we get to discuss it in public, and, you know, like I said, so I came in thinking one thing, so something Ms. Hurst said sort of got me thinking another way, and now something, you know, Julia just said really has me thinking another way. I do think that at some point we should be creating this policy. I think we're being proactive right now, which I understand why we normally want to be, but I'm not necessarily sure we need to be a leader as a district on this right now. I think we could sort of see how things work out for our district, and then see, you know, what's happening sort of across the Commonwealth, and then sort of take that, because we have this in place, right? So now we can, you know, we can table it or whatever, and sort of adjust as we move forward, because I do think there's a lot of great work, time, and effort spent in putting this together. That should be commended. But, you know, like, I don't know, I just, like, I hate the fact that it's so controversial. Like, it should, I understand it's not necessarily an easy decision, but it shouldn't be, right? I don't think it should be, and I think that's what, when I'm hearing when people say, like, well, why are we doing this? It shouldn't be. But, you know, and I want to make sure we're not sort of causing an issue when we don't need to be. And I think that's what you were saying too, where you're like, oh, I could take it or leave it, and, you know, but I do appreciate all the work that went into it, and you know, this is, you know, policy can be a lot of fun, but there's times like this, there's just no winning, right? Because even if it passed, you sort of feel like you lost a little bit, and if it doesn't pass, you feel like, you know, you've lost months of work. So, you know, thank you for your time in this, but, you know, I think it is something that we need to think about moving forward, but I don't think we need to sort of rush into setting in stone, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I'd move to vote on this.
Okay. Okay. Do I have to have a second for that? I think we just vote whether we're going to vote, right? Vote to vote. Yes? No?
Do other people want to talk? Michelle, did you want to say something?
No, Michelle
move
moved
to
to
vote.
vote.
Okay.
All right, so don't we have to vote whether we're going to vote? Yes? Okay.
Well, there was no second, so no, we don't, because
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Oh.
I would second it. I just didn't hear.
Okay.
I'm kinda
All those in favor of voting? That's 3. I think it's going to tie. All those opposed? 3. Okay, so Michelle, the motion fails. Michelle?
I actually do believe we need a policy because to put it on the superintendent puts him in a difficult place. And he shouldn't have to fight the culture war on his own. I personally believe that the policy should be that we fly the flags of the governmental entities that we represent. And I went to see what other governmental agencies did regarding this. And the Department of Defense has a policy, and some of the things they say are very true. And we've learned that flags are a powerful symbol. But their policy also says we must always remain focused on what unifies us. And I think what unifies us is education of our children. The teaching of values is the role of parents, and parents are involved in the school. So to me, the teaching of values, which is what almost all of the flags that have been discussed are about, is really something that can be done in the home. And we've seen all across our town that there are flags that show what the community's support is for all kinds of people. The policy ends by saying, what has always united us remains clear, our common mission, our oath to support and defend the Constitution and our American flag. So I think what we need to do is focus on our mission, which is education, and that education is required by the state and by the federal government, and compulsory education, and those are the flags that we should fly. There's nothing wrong with a teacher flying a flag in their room, whether it's for Ukraine or Spain or whatever. A banner is not a flag, but what the problem here is that we're at a crossroads where we're trying to teach values through flags instead of trying to teach values through our actions, through our curriculum, and through our parents. So I would encourage us to send this back to the policy working group to come up with a policy that says we only fly official government flags. So I would encourage us to vote no on this policy.
Thank you. And again, like Julia, that would be a new...
Totally new.
We would first vote, and then that would be a new motion. All right. So the motion on, I am mindful that we have, we're not finished with our agenda. We do have an executive session this evening. I know this is an important conversation, and it's pretty clear what the motion there may be more motions after this, but the current motion is an up or down vote on the current policy before us. Does anyone have, is that about, go ahead.
Well, I think the thing that's different about this scenario, and I think the reality is what triggered this, is the motion to fly the progress flag last year. And I hear what Michelle is saying, and I appreciate the reference to the Department of Defense, but as a school district, we actually do have different mandates. And this is coming from our own DESE, which is the principles for ensuring the safe and supportive learning environment for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender.
I'm going to interrupt because we're actually not debating whether or not the pride flag, that is not what we're debating.
It has to do
We're debating
with
about whether we should have this policy or
Right,
not.
it has to do with Michelle's comment about what flags we do or do not fly, which she was allowed to speak on. So one of the principles of this policy talks about Point 6, schools through their curriculum shall encourage and respect the human rights and civil rights of all individuals, including LGBTQ individuals. The regulations for addressing the student anti-discrimination law state, this is again from our DESE, so we have a Department of Defense site, this is Mass DESE, talking about schools.
Point of order, did you recognize Ms. Cizik to speak? Because I believe you were trying to ask her to stop.
No, I did.
Okay.
And I understand, but what I think, I was trying to be clear that Michelle brought up something that is a potential future motion, just as Julia did, and it feels like you're addressing her potential future motion and not the policy that is on the table.
I would disagree, because I think the question is what is the role of, what is the role of the flags and symbols and values and teaching and all of that? Like Michelle has introduced, what values do we teach in the schools? We reference values all the time. So what I'm simply saying is that state law talks about values in curriculum and civil rights, and it says, again, this is from the DESE, research shows that inclusion of LGBTQ topics in curriculum corresponds to all students reporting that they feel safer in school, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Curricula shall reflect issues of sexual orientation and gender identity as relevant to be inclusive across subject areas, including but not limited to health, social science, language arts, and family life. So I guess the point I want to make is that if we're going to cite the DOD about flag policy, I think we also have to be able to cite Mass DESE about flag policy. And I went online today, and this is a flag that the Mass DESE lets you print out and post in your schools. This is coming from our state DESE.
Again, we are not debating the pride flag. We are debating whether or not to approve the policy, which does not specify whether the policy is about the American flag, the pride flag, any other flag.
I agree, but if we're going to introduce and put limits on what kind of policies we're going to have, we need, I think it's either an all or nothing. Like, I totally think we can move to vote on this and we can start over, but I want to be clear that nothing we're talking about limits our ability to do anything with flags, and I would actually argue that the state of Massachusetts Department of Education is actively encouraging districts to take a leadership role in the teaching of values as it relates to inclusion. Like, I'm not, this is from the state. It's not like I've just pulled this out of thin air.
Okay.
That's the point I want to make.
I'm going to ask if I can move to vote.
Well, I have just a quick clarifying question, just a quick question. So if we vote down this policy and we don't have a policy, a member could still come and make a motion to fly a flag?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I want to know.
Right.
And I want to put for the record that I do not agree.
It would be exactly as it has always been. We have never had a policy.
If I vote no, it doesn't mean
I've moved to vote. Do I have a second?
Michelle Bailey.
Second.
Second by David Polito. All right, we've moved to vote, so there can be no further discussion. So the motion on the table is to approve the flag policy as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is unanimous, and the vote is unanimous, and the motion fails. 6-0 of all the members present. Okay. I am mindful of our time, Eric. I know that we need to get to executive session, correct? Yeah.
Still waiting to hear back from him.
Okay. Do you have district goal updates? Do you want to do that? Okay.
Yes. Thank you. District goal updates are back in action. They've been in and out here while we popped out on vacation, and just wanted to let people know, and the DEI the advisory committee has met on March 9th. The work for the meeting included reviewing the student outcome data and planning for focus groups. They'll begin focus groups in the next couple of months, actually a couple of weeks. Monday, March 14th, PD with all the staff, examining social identity, dynamics of dominant cultures, influence of formation of prejudices and stereotypes, understanding how stereotypes form the basis of unconscious or implicit bias, and then exploring how unconscious bias impacts inclusion and belonging in our classroom and schools. We have a number of volunteers that jumped in on the PD day that are trainers for us that have stepped up to the plate. At the Bucher, Nicole Gray and Lisa Garrity. At the Cutler, Ann Creelson, Liz Brown. At the Winthrop, Brian Shekels. At the Miles River Middle School, Kaylee Mangiarelli and Sarah DeCruz. And at the high school, Heather Mays. They have volunteered to be are trained trainers, so they'll work with EJP and continue the work of gathering information from them and bringing it back to each of their buildings. And then faculty and district leadership completed surveys. We also had one-to-one interviews. I had a one-to-one interview myself the other day with one of the partners, and this is all information that they continue to collect for the equity audit, which is due to us around June, early June. As you know, we got the $81,000 DESE grant for accelerated literacy learning with high-quality instructional materials. We're currently trying to narrow down instructional materials and with administrators and coaches to try to get some pilots going. We have a super short window. Grant funds have to be used by June 30th. The MTSS leadership group spent February 16th together creating literacy and instructional vision and priorities and the beginning to identify essential agreements. Professional study groups wrapped up this week. Teachers spending time reading each other's reflections and their studies in they share with each other in a mighty network, an online network, so they are able to post things and share with each other the work that they're doing. At the secondary level, there was an initial meeting with the middle school MTSS team coordinators. They just building their teams now. Completed initial classroom walkthroughs to gauge the use of district inclusive practices. They're still working to build the structure to invite classroom teachers to conduct walkthroughs with curriculum leaders and admin. We met leadership team yesterday. That's our April start. We will start to pull teachers with us as we do these walkthroughs, so we want them to be part of that discussion and process with us. We're analyzing data from classroom walkthroughs. We're looking at data sources, like what makes sense at the middle school level to use as a common data source. We drafted our instructional look-fors. We're using that. When I go to a building to walk the building with a principal, we have designated look-fors for each building for that person and I. And my first question is, what are we looking for today? They pull from that list, we look for that, and then we document what we're doing. So we start to hone in on really building instructional leadership within the district by kind of this process we've been working with the leadership team. It's important to me to shift them from management and operations into instructional leadership. We've been doing management and operations for 2 years straight, just boom, 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 boom with COVID. So now let's get back to the academic and let's really get them moving forward with instructional leadership. And then continue to document the curriculum. We have lots of curriculum work going on during the PD day as well. And then the field committee, do you want to do that or do you want me to do it?
You can do it.
Okay. Gale Associates completed the initial schematic design for the athletic facilities improvement project that includes tennis courts and improvements to the softball field behind the middle school. Estimates and design were presented to the facilities improvement working group on 3/7. The 2022 State of Our Schools facilities, we saw that already, and then the Mass Building Authority officially invited the district to eligibility period for Cutler. So those are the things that are currently aligned with the goals that we're working on. Some of the goals that we've already completed are the World Language Group piece and now the Portrait of the Graduate. So making good progress.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great.
Can I just ask a question? So you said that there's going to be focus groups for the DEIB audit. So this is a personal pet peeve of mine. Like, you need to have those dates out 2 weeks in advance, because if you have to get a babysitter or rearrange your calendar or whatever, so if they're coming up in the next 2 weeks, I'm hoping it's coming out in the update tomorrow.
Internally.
Okay.
Internally. So
Okay.
we'll start internally to kind of spiraling out. So they'll be doing this from now all the way through May. So.
Well, I would say even now, there's probably people in this audience who have plans on certain dates in May. So if they needed to know that date, they probably need to know that date.
Definitely.
So.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, I have lots of plans in May because it's a big month. So I'm going to have lots of free time, though.
I was going to say, you have much more free
I was
time
going to say, yeah, exactly.
Traveling.
on that calendar.
Oh, boy. Okay. Anything else on that? On the goals? All right, do we have committee reports? Capital Finance?
I didn't go to the last capital finance. Do we
Finance,
have
you've
a-
got our report. We tasked Vinny with making a
Yes, we did.
contact, and then we've got it, so.
Okay. Policy?
Policy is meeting on Monday to continue J section. David, Monday, 6 o'clock, policy. It's going to be super fun. It's also going to be Michelle Horgan's last policy subcommittee meeting, which I'm just going to say publicly that Michelle and I have been working on that committee for the last 2 years together, and I'm really going to miss her because I think she and I are actually great counterbalances to each other, and if we can get to the point where Michelle Horgan and I agree on something, it's usually pretty solid. So I just want to say publicly, I'm going to be sad that it's the last policy subcommittee, but I want to make it our goal to get through the J section. Do you think we can do the J section?
All right, just stop talking.
Okay, thank you.
Bring the cat.
I have to put myself together. Okay.
The truth hurts.
Negotiations, we have a meeting on Wednesday with the custodial union. On the chair's report, I just want to remind everyone, I know I'm preaching to the choir, the people that are listening to this meeting, but remember that town meeting is coming up on April 2nd, and that election day is April 7th. And then I just want to make the committee aware that I have my own topic for a future meeting, which is that, and I believe I talked to Julia about this a long time ago, but I did talk to some other school committees about the idea of creating sort of a school committee coffee, maybe a regular opportunity for the public to meet one or two school committee members. That's not for discussion right now. I'm just warning you that that's something I'd like to put on a future agenda. Do I have anyone else who has topics for future meetings?
Well, can we just circle back to the budget dog and pony show?
Oh, yeah.
I know, David, you were all set for the Mothers Club. You got the email?
28th or whatever.
Yes, perfect. Okay, and you know the date. All right. And any luck with Friends of the Arts and the library?
The Friends of the Arts is this week, I believe, or next week. I just got an email about it. And that's just my fault about the library, but I'll reach out to them.
Okay, super. And Eric and Vinny, we're going to be at the Council on Aging on Wednesday.
Yep.
I'll bring muffins. Or Vinny, were you going to bring muffins?
Sure.
Next week.
I know, I'll
Why don't you get the scones?
I'm actually going to try and swing by that too.
Order the
Might not.
scones.
No.
All right, fine.
All right.
Order the scones.
Okay. I can get them. Okay.
Oh, no, I'll stop it. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
I have a topic for future meeting.
Yeah, Anna.
I would like to put on the agenda a discussion and vote about flying the Progress Pride flag for the month of June in celebration of Pride Month.
Sounds amazing to me.
Month of June. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Are we ready? Okay. I move to enter into executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Part 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, discrimination case, and not to return to open session.
Second.
Can I just ask a question? Should we put on there for discussion of negotiating or no?
This was dictated to us by our attorney, how we should put this on here. So.
I meant with Ask Me. I don't know, do we have anything to update them on since the last time we met?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about my motion.
I don't think we've met.
No, we didn't meet.
Okay,
we didn't meet. I mean,
Yeah.
we
Let's,
met,
clean it
but
up
we didn't
tomorrow.
meet with them.
Okay.
No. Sorry. Okay, I actually believe we did that a little out of order, but I believe I got a second from Anna Siedzik.
I second it.
All right, and it's a roll call. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Anna?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
All right, and we are moving to executive session. I've been instructed not to say we are adjourned because we're moving to executive session.
No,
Are we back in that room?